Chapter 6 Sky Meadow. The rest of the migration to Sunhair's Northern Territory passed slowly and without incident. On the final day, Star woke from a terrible dream. He was out of breath and covered in leaves, like he'd been rolling. "You okay there, Star?" asked Grosswing, stretching his wings in the dawn light. Star stood up and shook off the loose leaves stuck to his mane and tail. Above him, the 100-year star rested low in the sky. He'd been dreaming about the Starfire that would invade his body at midnight on his birthday. If he was still alive, he dreamed the power would change him into a destroyer, like it did Nightwing. Thinking about it now, a tear formed in his eye and rolled down his cheek. In the dream, he attacked Sunherd and accidentally set Morningleaf on fire. Just before he woke, he watched Morningleaf's aqua feathers melt off her bones like mossberries had. Star shuddered. He couldn't tell Grosswing this, so he said, "I'm fine, just tired of walking." Grosswing nodded skeptically, but said, "Well, I have good news for you. We'll be home today." "Today?" Star was overjoyed. He would see his friends. A few hours later, Star and Grosswing emerged from the dense sycamore forest into the open plains. Lush, long grass, teeming with life, was spread for miles ahead of them. Huge, puffy clouds floated across a deep blue sky. Thick trees rose from the ground like giants, and a creek bubbled steadily nearby. "Is this the Northern Territory?" Star asked, awed. "It is." Grosswing flared his nostrils and trumpeted news of their arrival. His voice, strong and clear, carried for miles, and it wasn't the first time Star could see the remnants of the legendary warrior he'd once been. Star stepped into the northern lands, exhausted. His legs trembled as he set each hoof down. The fire had forced Grosswing to change course, and they'd had to take a roundabout way home, adding many days to their journey. And the new path didn't take them past any lakes, so the Sunherd walkers had been unable to bathe. Star's hide was stained with mud and infested with burrs, and he still smelled like smoke. But his heart lifted when a large formation of Sunherd flyers came into view, coasting down a plateau and landing in front of the walkers. "Where's Star?" he heard someone say. He raised his neck, but didn't see any of his friends. "Star!" Morningleaf cried as she shoved through the herd and barreled into him, burrowing her nose into his thick black mane. "You're home!" Star exhaled as though he'd been holding his breath for an entire moon and nickered softly. "Yes, I'm home." He looked up as Echo Frost and Bumblewind galloped to his side. "You're all here," Star said. "All safe." "Of course," said Morningleaf. "It was you we were worried about." "We heard about fire," said Bumblewind, glancing at Star's singed feathers. "Are you hurt?" Star kicked the dirt, his throat too tight to speak right away. After a moment, he murmured, "I'm fine." Morningleaf looked up at him, her eyes bright and curious, taking in his condition. Star could only imagine how he looked to her. Thin and wiry, with shredded wingtips and a tangled, filthy tail. "You're taller," she said. Star raised his head. "I am?" he replied, surprised. Bumblewind stood next to him and confirmed it. "Yep, you grew, or else we shrank." Echo Frost nickered, amused. "Maybe you'll grow into those big wings," said Morningleaf. "Come on, we'll walk the rest of the way. We'll wait until you see Sky Meadow." "And the grandmother tree," added Echo Frost. "It's huge and old." "Is there a lake?" asked Star. "I could use a bath." His friends whinnied in agreement. They trotted the final length of the migration and emerged into Sky Meadow, the largest grazing field in their territory. Star halted, stunned. He'd never seen such a wide expanse of lush, green grass, and now that he was weaned, it looked delicious. "Incredible," he said, wanting to roll on it. Morningleaf whinnied, "Isn't it fantastic?" Star nodded, understanding now why Rockwing was interested in taking Sunherd's territory. After the walkers had settled, Thunderwing prepared Grasswing with questions about the migration and the fire, and about Mossberry. The old Palomino shook his head, clearly in no mood to answer, but he patiently gave Thunderwing his report until the Overstallion was satisfied. Morningleaf led Star to a comfortable thicket to rest. As soon as his aching hooves touched the soft, shaded grass, his legs buckled, and he collapsed with a grunt. Echo Frost and Bumblewind returned to their mothers, but Morningleaf stayed beside Star, grooming the burrs out of his mane as he slept. When he woke up a few hours later, he was starving. He and Morningleaf grazed in silence until it was almost dark. "The next migration will be easier," she said. "You'll fly then, I'm sure. The shape of your wings is correct. You just have to grow into them." "The next migration's after my birthday," Star reminded her. "So?" Star shook his head. Morningleaf did not want to believe her sire would execute him, even though the Overstallion had promised it. "Never mind." Morningleaf ruffled her feathers and changed the subject. "There's a lake down that pathway. Let's go. I think a bath will make you feel as good as new." Morningleaf nodded towards the beaten trail leading out of the meadow. Star shook his head. "It's too late to swim," he said, looking at the bright moon over their heads. Morningleaf curled her lip. "But you smell like mud." Star nickered, still subdued from his long walk. Sweetroot trotted over to them with her wings full of green shoots. "Eat these," she said to Star. "It's licorice root for your sore muscles." She dropped the roots. "Thank you," Star said. He chewed the roots, the sharp flavor making him grimace. "Mossberry was my good friend," Sweetroot said, flicking her chestnut tail, her dark eyes threatening tears. "Grasswing told me you faced the fire and tried to help her. That was brave of you, Star. Thank you." She nuzzled him and trotted back to where she'd come. "You did that?" asked Morningleaf, looking incredulous. Star nodded, "But I couldn't save her." He shook off a fly. "Twistfire says I'm bad luck, or worse. What if it's true? What if I am the destroyer?" Morningleaf nickered. "Nothing that happened is your fault. Not the fire, and not what happened to Mossberry." "That's what Grasswing said. You should listen to him. He's wise. Grasswing, Silvercloud, Dawnfur, and the others, they'd be talking about you, Star, trying to piece together the legends of the previous Black Foals." "But all the other Black Foals, they all died except for Nightwing." "As far as we know. But Grasswing thinks the Starfire is neutral, that you get to choose what it transforms you into, a healer or a destroyer. My mother believes the same." Star ground a root between his teeth, thinking, "But why would Nightwing choose to destroy the herds of Anok? He was loved and protected by his guardian herd. It doesn't make any sense." Morningleaf sighed. "We may never know. It was 400 years ago. But I believe in you. I believe you're going to unite the 5 herds." Star's heart raced at her words. The Starfire he would inherit felt unreal to him, like a bad dream, but in truth it grew closer every single day. The 2 friends lay side by side, thinking their separate thoughts as the moon rose above them. After a while, Star spoke. "Before she died, Mossberry told me the elders believe Nightwing is still alive." Morningleaf gasped. "What? How?" "The ancient legends speak of Black Falls as being—" Star struggled to find the right word. Immortal. Morningleaf blinked at him, stunned into silence. Star continued. Black foals hibernate when they're tired or injured, but they don't die. At least, that's what Mossberry believes. He shook his head. Believed. Tears formed in Morningleaf's eyes, making them extra bright. She inhaled sharply, filtering the scents of the nights through her nostrils. That's incredible. And why are you sad? He asked. Because of Nightwing? No. Morningleaf looked away. Because I will die someday and then you'll be alone. Star pricked his ears. He'd never thought about the possibility of outliving his friends. He curled his neck over hers. It's too much to think about right now. Let's just focus on getting me past my first birthday. He was trying to make her feel better, but her wings sagged and she looked even more forlorn. Finally she spoke. So, where is Nightwing then, if he's still alive? Star stared west towards the ocean. The elders think he travelled across the sea to the territory of the Landwalkers, and that he's hibernating there. Mossberry had told him that this idea had been passed down to her through the descendants of Spiderwing, one of the few Pegasi to survive Nightwing's massacre. Spiderwing was the founding stallion of all the modern Pegasi. Morningleaf swiveled her ears, thinking her thoughts as Star thought of his. The Landwalkers on the other side of the ocean were legendary creatures that tamed beasts, commanded the land to grow their food, and walked upright. No modern Pegasi had ever seen one, and it was believed the Landwalkers were unaware of Anok. But stories about the two-legged beings entertained the foals on cold winter nights. So, Nightwing could wake up, asked Morningleaf. Star yawned, exhausted. I guess so. The 100-year star burned bright in the dark sky, brighter than the moon, and as Star looked up, he caught sight of movement in the rocky foothills. It was Silvercloud with the captain, Oakfire. The pair trotted down into Sky Meadow and separated. A few minutes later, they were followed by Grasswing, Dawnfur, and a few others. What are they doing up there? He asked. Morningleaf followed his eyes. My mother, Grasswing, and the rest, they meet up there at Poppyfeather's Mirror to talk about you, about how to protect you. Thunderwing doesn't know, of course. Star was surprised. I had no idea. Morningleaf nuzzled him. You're not alone, Star. He looked away from her, embarrassed and pleased. And he watched his supporters merge back into the herd, careful not to draw attention. The next day, Morningleaf, Star, Echofrost, and Bumblewind left the herd and travelled to Big Sky Lake to swim. Thunderwing's sky patrols kept an eye on them, and all of Sun heard from the air. Did you hear the news? Said Bumblewind to the group. Twistfire spotted mountain herd steeds on this side of the Blue Mountains. They were spying on us. Bumblewind was breathing hard, partly from excitement, and partly from the effort of walking. Star noticed that the Pinto colt had grown portly since the weaning in the Southern Territory. I heard, said Morningleaf, pinning her ears. Those hairy goats better stay off our land. Echofrost looked nervously towards the Blue Mountains, the northwestern end of Mountain Herd's territory. Star felt guilty knowing all this spying and interest from Mountain Herd was because of him. It was unfortunate that the two herds' territories shared such a long border. The thin vein between them was the only buffer, and to cross it would be considered an act of war by either herd. The four friends reached Blue Sky Lake and suddenly forgot all about Mountain Herd. Look at it, breathed Echofrost. Star halted. In front of him was the clearest and bluest lake he'd ever seen. Last one is the land horse, whinnied Bumblewind. Star flattened his ears and galloped towards the lake, determined to be the first one in. He reached the shore and dived under the surface. The water, which fed into the lake from the mountains, was ice cold. Morningleaf splashed in above him and then propelled herself down, gliding gracefully to meet him. Star kicked, swimming lower where the light was dim. 2 lake salmon flashed by, a blur of pink, and he watched them disappear into the distance. Morningleaf ran out of air and rose to the surface. Star cruised over the sandy bottom, pretending he could fly. When he surfaced, he sprayed water out of his nose and looked around. Silvercloud had told them that Big Sky Lake was the deepest lake in their territory. The beaches were covered in soft, round pebbles, perfect for rolling on and for scratching backs. Red spruce trees circled the lake, and the dark blue water reflected the trees in clouds. Star paddled towards Bumblewind, who was floating and soaking up the sun, his eyes closed. Echo Frost was flying low over the water, letting her hooves drag and make ripples on the surface. Suddenly, a familiar voice interrupted the peaceful silence. "Look, Storm, it's a flock of ducks." Star looked up and saw Brackentail and his gang buzzing over their heads. Morningleaf paddled towards shore. "I thought I told you to leave me alone," she whinnied. Star pricked his ears, wondering when Morningleaf had spoken to Brackentail. It must have been a while since Star was migrating. Brackentail and his friends landed. Striped Storm spoke to the fillies. Morningleaf and Echo Frost. "Believe it or not, we weren't following you. We came here to swim." "Let's go," said Brackentail. "There'll be -1 friend soon enough." He shot Star a menacing glance. Morningleaf tensed and Brackentail darted out of her striking range. Star opened his mouth, but Morningleaf whinnied over him. "Someday you'll be sorry you treated him this way, Brackentail." Brackentail paused, his expression thoughtful. "If the 100-year Star turned him into a destroyer, then, yeah, maybe I will." Star charged into the brown colt, knocking him down and straddling him. "I've had enough of you, Brackentail." The big brown colt rolled onto his hooves and flew into the sky, forcing Star to look up at him. "You want to fight me, Dudwing?" Star looked at his friends, who shook their heads, begging him not to agree, and then back at Brackentail. "Sure, why not?" "Star, no!" neighed Morningleaf. Brackentail hesitated, assessing Star. The big colt hovered, flapping his wings with practiced dexterity, and then he brightened. "You're on. Tomorrow at noon, on the upper flats, we'll finish this." "Agreed," said Star. Brackentail flew off to swim in the lake, followed by Striped Storm and Flamesky. Morningleaf faced Star, ears pinned. "What are you thinking, Star? What will you gain by fighting Brackentail?" Star looked into her glowing eyes, unsure how to explain. "Things with him are only going to get worse if I don't deal with him now." "Star's right," said Bumblewind, bobbing his head. "It's a stallion thing." Morningleaf and Echo Frost rolled their eyes. "It's ridiculous," said Morningleaf. "And you don't fight a Pegasus on his own terms. He sets Star. He's going to send you to the Golden Meadow." Star swatted a fly with his tail. "It has to be on his terms, Morningleaf, otherwise it won't mean anything." She grunted. "It means you're a fool, Star. You're going to lose." She stared at him, unflinching. "Stay away from me, then." Star turned his back on her and trotted home towards Sky Meadow. His friends followed, and Morningleaf buzzed over his head. "I'm sorry," she said. He glared at her. "Let's talk tomorrow, after I prove you wrong." Morningleaf left them and flew home. Bumblewind and Echo Frost walked with Star, but none of them spoke. When they arrived at Sky Meadow, Star led them to the cool grass beneath the branches of a weeping willow. Morningleaf landed on the far side of the field and nestled into a deer thicket by herself. Star already regretted his words and wished Morningleaf would join them, but she was still upset. He could tell by her taut wings. He'd waited over a moon to see her, and now they were separated again because of Brackentail and his useless friends. Star felt precious time passing as each sunrise brought him closer to his dreaded birthday.